I would like to say that the entire program this year is a real honor to participate, but I was thrilled when today's speaker, former Orange County Mayor Linda Chapin, agreed. She is someone that I have admired for a number of years and has served not only as a great role model for a number of others in the community, but it's easy to be a mayor and be in the limelight for, in her case, 8 years from 1990 to 1998, and then sort of do something else. And although when I last talked to her, she was in South Africa, enjoying some of her fruits of her labors, she has given so much more, I would say, in the last 12 years since she stepped down as mayor. I am thrilled and honored to recognize her as our speaker, and I could give you a long-standing, I won't. Thank you so much. And Linda Chapin.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am especially pleased to be here with you today. As some of you undoubtedly know, some of my best friends are lawyers, including my husband and my son, Andrew. When Woody called me about joining you today and told me that the event being celebrated was Law Day, I did what any high school sophomore would do. I Googled it. The American Bar Association has a website devoted to Law Day, and one of the sections this year is a question put to various experts on the law, judges, lawyers, legal scholars, and the question, as really has been referred to earlier today, is what is the biggest challenge facing law in the 21st century? And the answers were various, and they were very interesting. How to wage war, how to export the rule of law to the rest of the world, how to deal with technological changes, we heard that, maintain traditional values and ethics, provide access to the legal system. And it really wasn't until I was vacationing half a world away, talking to Woody, that it occurred to me that I had not, on that website, seen any discussion of perhaps the most fundamental premise of all, how to ensure justice. Bruce and I were in South Africa a few weeks ago. We spent a day in the stunning Museum of Apartheid. We visited the prison on Robben Island where Nelson Mandela and other political prisoners were held for decades, held under a system of law that justified a cruel repression of a majority, 90%, of South Africans. Because in 1948, the ruling National Party began passage of the race laws. An appointed ethnographer determined whether a person was black or white or colored, and one was then assigned to a particular homeland to live. 9 million South Africans needed passports to travel within their own country. The penalties for protest included fines, imprisonment, and beating, and in South African jails, protesters died or disappeared. Nelson Mandela was not the only one who declared, quote, "I consider myself neither morally nor legally obliged to obey these laws." But he became the leader and the face of the struggle. The story of his 27 years of imprisonment, his eventual release, and the policy of reconciliation with his oppressors is to me the tale of a modern-day miracle, but that is a story for another day. What I want to talk about today is the rule of law and the role of the individual. We in America are in no position, of course, to throw stones. The Jim Crow policies that segregated the Deep South for over 100 years were laws passed by state legislatures and town councils. The outrages of Nazi Germany were in many instances based on law. Too many genocides past and present have found their rationale in some kind of law. And so we come to the role and the responsibility of the individual who confronts the unjust law. Mohandas Gandhi, a lawyer, by the way, who began his career in South Africa. I had not known that. determined that the correct path lay in nonviolent civil disobedience. Martin Luther King and others in America followed his example. The philosopher Friedrich Bonhoeffer, teaching at Princeton when the Nazis came to power, chose to return to Germany to speak out against Hitler and was executed in a Nazi concentration camp. Nelson Mandela, pressed beyond civil disobedience, spoke to the world. The time comes in the life of any nation when there remains only two choices, submit or fight. That time has now come to South Africa, and we shall not submit. All of them individuals, speaking and acting against unjust laws. And please do not think that these things are historic relics of a less enlightened age. All of the things I spoke about happened in my lifetime. And if you doubt that serious injustice and oppression are still sanctioned by laws in this modern world, I ask you to look at the condition of hundreds of millions of women in different parts of the globe. There can certainly be a role for any citizen to play when confronted by this. I contribute to a fund that builds schools for girls in Afghanistan. But I would certainly suggest to you that there is a special responsibility for those who study and practice the law. A special responsibility for you. Do any of you remember the very quirky Orlando tradition that we had for a decade or so called the Kumquat Sachet? For several years, that parade included a group of pinstriped folks carrying briefcases and walking in cadence who called themselves the marching lawyers. And it was just hilarious, and it was a great joke, but for some reason, the memory of that came back to me when lawyers in Pakistan joined together to lead the effort to restore the rule of law and the role of the courts in the face of dictatorship. I am awfully glad that there are some children in our audience today, because I am a great believer that there are moral truths to be found very often in children's books, from The Little Prince to The Velveteen Rabbit to The Jabberwocky. And I would like to share a passage that I have read to my grandchildren. It is called The Yellow Star, and it tells the story of King Christian X, the beloved leader of Denmark, as the Nazis rolled over that small country early in World War II. And so I will read to you from that book for a moment. The terrible news arrived quietly with leaflets that fluttered down on the city of Copenhagen. New law, effective immediately. All Jews must sew onto their clothing a yellow star, which must be visible at all times. People of Denmark were frightened. They had heard terrible stories. In some places, once Jews wore the yellow star, they were taken away and not heard from again. As before, the people looked to their king. But this time the king was as frightened as his people. Without the yellow star to point them out, the Jews looked like any other Danes. Gentiles and Jews were all Danish subjects who worshipped God in different ways.